an idea of Gareth and of the YMCA to get people more engaged with a certain vote that's happening later this month. You might not have heard about it. It's fairly crucial, and particularly trying to get a few young people involved, because of course young people are our future. And of course, if we leave or stay in the European Union, it's going to be young people that have to deal with it in whatever guise it is when the decision's made. So we have an assortment of political figures to my left and to my right, quite literally in some cases. And I'm just going to ask each of them to go through and introduce themselves, say a bit about, maybe a little bit about themselves, but crucially in 2 minutes, just to start with, guys, say why you are leaning in or out on the referendum question and why. So we will move from the far right, but I went to my left as well. Adam, could you start off?
Okay. I'll stand. So my name's Adam Rose. I'm a member of the Socialist Workers' Party, and I'm here representing the Left Exit or Left Leave campaign. I'm a socialist. I'm opposed to austerity. I'm opposed to neoliberalism, and also I'm particularly opposed to racism. The reasons that I am voting to leave, I think if you look at austerity, you look at the economic argument, the clearest case for a socialist and an anti-austerity, anti-capitalist reason to leave is what they did to Greece. Greece elected a socialist government. It actually had a referendum saying no, yes or no to austerity. A larger proportion of people voted against austerity than actually voted for the government. And the European Union, the institutions of the European Union, crushed that government. They blackmailed them. The European Bank, for example, shut down the banks, and forced that anti-austerity government to capitulate and basically do what the banks wanted, do what the IMF and all those sorts of people wanted. And now what you've got terrible poverty, very, very high youth unemployment. We're talking 50% of young people are unemployed, and that kind of thing. So I think there's an economic argument, if you're on the left, to vote to leave the European Union. That's the economic argument. I also have an anti-racist argument. So I think it's an absolute disgrace that there are camps in Europe for the first time in the Second World War. We have the Front National getting elected, doing very well in France. We have a fascist party came within a few tens of thousands of votes getting elected president in Austria. But what we've seen the European Union do, people are dying in the Mediterranean. There's no reason for people fleeing persecution and war and famine and oppression. There's no reason why anybody should be dying. The reason that they're dying is because of Fortress Europe. Basically, the European Union is on the board, in the sea next to Italy, in the sea next to Greece. It's preventing these people coming in, and as a result, people are dying. And I think this is a disgrace. And I think anybody who is opposed to racism, as I am, should also, for that reason, should vote to leave the European Union. There's some strategic arguments about.
We've run out of time now on that one.
Okay.
We've got to keep it to 2 minutes.
One more.
So.
If you want to get rid of Cameron, vote to leave.
Right, Alan, you next.
My name's Alan Johnson. I'm from the Green Party in Bolton. I'm a socialist as well. I'm a Green socialist. In 1975, and I hope there's many of us I can see more than maybe one, a couple of us, 3 of us.
A couple of the back there.
I not only voted to come out of the common market, I actively campaigned for a no vote. But times have changed and we've moved on, and we've all moved on. I'm advocating, and my party advocating to remain involved in Europe for the simple reasons that we think Europe is beneficial. It's beneficial to us in a number of reasons. Least of all, but at the top, but parallel, climate change, tackling climate change, got to be done collectively, 28 nations. Tackling climate change got more of a clout could go to the rest of the world. Individual countries trying to tackle climate change. Just while I'm on climate change is real. it's actually happened. It's not just happened in some other country, some other nation, it's some other region. It's happened at Christmas time in Cumbria and Lancashire. And I've just been checking some figures before I came down tonight. And the estimated cost by the accountants, I think KPMG, for the floods in Cumbria and Lancashire was £6 billion. £6 billion. The floods in the south in 2007 estimated cost of £3 billion. So climate change, the effects of climate change does cost. Not only does it ruins people's businesses and their lives, and climate change, it can cross borders. It can cross borders, it can affect everyone.
Okay,
the second one is, as a trade unionist and a Green Party member, I support workers' rights, employment rights, and we've got employment rights due to the EU, through national government, but through trade unions, protected in law by the EU. That's maternity leave, parental leave, equal pay for women. I could go on and on.
Yeah, I'm going to have to stop you, Alan, because you're over your 2 minutes. Now, thank you very much for that. I'm going to have to keep you politicians in check. So, Martin.
Hi, I'm Martin. I'm representing the UK Independence Party, and I'm a realist, really. You obviously understand where we come from, the UK Independence Party. We want out of the European Union. The European Union, when it first started in 1975 as a single market, single economic area, single European economic area, community of trade, was potentially a good idea. Get fractured Europe, get Europe that of independent sovereign countries trading with one another. Get them to break to France and Germany to break bread with one another and to start a unity of cooperation. However, since 1975 to now, it has morphed and changed into a federalist superstate. In everything but name, the United States of Europe. In everything but name. Now, people are saying, why should we leave? It's uncertain if we leave. It's just as uncertain if we stay. Gentlemen here and in the audience joined up in 1975, but in 1985 it had changed from the European Economic Community to the European Community. Nobody foresaw that happening. From 1985 to 1995, it changed from the European Community to the European Union. More political unity. It had one fiscal policy, one monetary policy, directives and regulations and legislations governing all the bloc. It resulted in, by the year 2000, a single currency, the euro. If in 1975 they'd have said, look guys, here's what we're going to do. We're going to start trading, and then every 7 years we're going to have a step change into something more closer, and closer still. By the year 2000, a single federalist union with a single currency, a single trade, single fiscal, single monetary, single foreign policy, single army, so to speak. I don't think that anyone in 1975 would have voted to join. Just like Norway hasn't voted to join in the past 3 referenda that they have had over the last 20 years. They stay out. We need to get out.
Okay, there we go. That's a nice point to finish on. Next up, Councillor Robinson. Please just introduce yourself and let us know your arguments.
Hi, I'm Councillor Craig Robinson from the Conservative Party, and I'm here representing Leave, basically. The main reason I have for wanting to leave is protectionism. Basically, Europe, as has been mentioned a couple of times now, the idea of this fortress Europe, it's simply a protectionist racket to boost failing industries in a few European countries at the expense of the rest of the world, and it's not working. As we can see with China and even Switzerland, with very large, very stable economies, without protectionist methods, while Europe is the only area in the entire world that is currently not developing as well as everyone else, where we have essentially a stagnation here and growth everywhere else. And the reason we have that is because Europe likes to talk from the top all the way down and treat everyone as if they're not good enough at handling their own money, so they're going to do it for you. And they do it in a way that means that you don't get entrepreneurship the way that we used to. And I don't think that's a good idea. But protectionism goes further than that. Protectionism doesn't just go for the economic argument, also protecting us from the rest of the world in terms of people coming in. We have free movement of people within Europe, but no one else can come in unless you jump through certain hoops, which is why we have a large migrant crisis with a lot of people dying in the sea because of European bureaucracy that says, well, we can't stop them coming here, so we're going to make all the airlines pay for it and all the ferry companies pay for everyone that comes in. If we decide that they can't stay here, the airline gets charged. And I actually printed out in case anyone wants to say that that's not what they're doing, I've got the directive here that actually states that. That is another reason we should leave Europe. Essentially, if there's a problem, Europe wants to be very bureaucratic about solving it and then do it in entirely the wrong way. And as a result, we fail as an area.
Okay. And Councillor Andrew Martin, your 2 minutes begins now.
Yeah, I must say, I've heard it all now. Europe, Brussels, we've got fewer bureaucrats than Derbyshire County Council. Yeah, they're stifling all these things. You've got Martin who said we've got one fiscal policy, but the UK's fiscal policy has nothing to do with the EU. And then have this great thing from Adam about Greece. Can you imagine your family lying about your debt situation in order to get a debt, and then when your creditors come along and ask you what you're going to do about it, then holding a vote between your family and saying, well, actually, we don't want to pay you back. Because that's exactly what happened in Greece. They held a vote about whether or not they should pay off their debts or not. It's absolutely ridiculous. But anyway, off that, who in here knows someone who's gone to work in another EU country? No one. You don't know anyone? Yeah, of course you do. Who knows someone who's gone to study in another EU country? Yeah, quite a few. Imagine a lot of you have gone on holiday in the EU a lot as well. When you did those things, you were exercising your free movement rights. Because of the EU, every one of us has the right to live, work or travel within the EU at the drop of a hat. If we leave the EU, we will put this freedom at risk. Brexit, it's about one thing. It's about putting up barriers between people. The concept is old-fashioned and it never works. I mean, look at your iPhone. It's designed in California, it's manufactured mostly in East Asia, but the components, including your camera and battery, they're designed and produced all over the world, including some European countries and some non-European countries. Because we live in a globalised world, and as a nation we will not advance by pulling up the drawbridge and increasing the cost of trade. We cannot turn back the clock. Freedom is under threat across the world. You've got out-and-out racist Donald Trump, who could become US president. You've got Vladimir Putin, who, not content with passing horrific anti-gay laws at home, is actually funding extremist parties across Europe. Both of them want Britain to leave the EU. Ask yourself this question. How do you see Britain? Do you see us as an open place where we exchange and trade with the rest of the world, or an isolated place where we cut ourselves off and don't look to the rest of the world? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Neil. And finally, we have Gary Titley, who could again explain a little bit about your experience and your arguments as well. 2 minutes begins now. Cheers.
Thank you, Liam. I'm Gary Titley. I was a member of the European Parliament for 20 years, although I retired 6 years ago. First of all, let's be clear, this debate is not about the European Union. It's actually about Britain's membership in the European Union. Two things are separate. You could easily argue that the EU is a naff organisation, but it's in Britain's interest to join it, or remain part of it. You can equally argue and say the EU is a brilliant organisation, it's not in the UK's interest to be part of it. So we need to distinguish, it's about the UK. It's also more fundamental than that. It's about the future. What sort of future do we want to have for ourselves, and in the case of people like me, our children and grandchildren? Do we want a future where we are together with our near neighbours working to find common solutions to common problems, where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts? Or do we want a future which sets us to one side, a future which is very uncertain, because each section of the Leave campaign has a different version of that future. Some talk about Norway, some talk about Albania, others say we'll wait and see, it'll be all right on the night. They even talk about us being able to do separate trade deals, although the EU has extensive trade deals which we're part of. They talk about separate trade deals with China, one of the most protectionist economies in the world. We are in a weaker position doing that if we do it alone. I would argue in favour of staying in the European Union for one word only: opportunity. The opportunity that being in a single market of 500 million people provides us and provides our businesses. The opportunity to attract investment into Britain, to create jobs and to create better futures for our young people. The opportunity that comes from being able to work, travel and study abroad. Remember, it was the European Union that broke the monopoly of the big airlines, so the cheaper airlines will enable us to be able to travel much more freely than we were before. The opportunity to have a cleaner, healthier environment. EU laws are the ones which are driving the environment. Already the Leave campaign are talking about abolishing those laws, talking about getting rid of the Habitat Directive. Opportunity that comes from working together on security with other countries like mine, so we protect ourselves from criminals and villains. All of that, of course, has a price.
Yeah.
CBI reckons it would cost us £115 per person to be part of the European Union.
Come on, Gary, be fair now.
The benefit of that is £1,300 per person. That is the balance. We shouldn't lose that opportunity.
Right.
Can I just come back on two of the points that was just made there?
Yes.
First of all, I've been travelling around Europe, and what a fantastic, diverse Europe is a place, a fantastic, diverse place. Travel 100 miles from here throughout Europe, you'll see fantastic, different range of cultures, architecture, fine wines and cheeses. But that is not reliant on EU membership. Whilst I was travelling, I met Canadians that were studying and working. I met South Africans, Chinese, Japanese. I met people from all over the world that was travelling, studying,
And it costs
working.
more money than the EU does those deals.
It is EU membership. They are not.
Deals with those blocks.
Is travelling, working and studying in Europe reliant on membership of the European Union?
It will be more expensive.
It doesn't make it money. Is it reliant?
It will be more expensive.
So it's no. So the answer is no.
I'm anxious not for this to be just a sparring between political parties.
Opportunity to travel.
Gents, we'll all get the opportunity to speak. We need to hear from the audience. Guys, I think one thing that perhaps has put some people off, some of the young people may agree with this, in the campaigns for both sides there's been a lot of just political bickering, so we really want to try and stay away from that and provide some clear answers. I appreciate, of course, they're going to be very different answers and there's going to be some conflict along the way, but if we can try and avoid just getting into a simple head-to-head stuff, we want to open up to the floor at some point. Just before we do, I thought it might be interesting to just see, I'm not going to ask people which way they're leaning, but I'm just going to ask how many people in this room have decided which way they're going to vote on June the 23rd. And how many people are on the fence? Not actually, just yourself, sir. So if you're the only one who needs convincing tonight, then. And you're not. You're not on the fence. Yes. Okay. So, but of course, there's still an opportunity for people to be swayed from one way to the other. So we would like to open up to the floor. I'd like to hear from everyone here today. So we'll try and get as many people's questions as possible. And again, we can keep them sort of fairly tight answers. I know it's a complex issue, and also you are politicians. So we'll go first. There's Paul that has hand up first, so we'll ask a question.
I have a question for Gary. He speaks about the opportunity for young people in the European Union. Could he comment on the current youth unemployment in Spain, in Greece, in Italy, and the other countries of Europe? Is this a wonderful opportunity that our British young people can look forward to?
All right, Gary, go ahead.
Right. As you well know, in 2008 we had a crashed economy throughout the world, a global economy collapse created by bankers behaving like gamblers. That has affected all our economies. The EU is currently working to improve that. Economic development has got underway again in Spain and in Italy. And bear in mind the point that we seem to be constantly making, that everybody's the same in the EU. Much of the Spanish fiscal policy is up to Spain, Italian fiscal policy up to Italy, British fiscal policy is up to the UK. Yes, we have an economic recession. What will make it worse, the first fragile senses of stability and growth have been re-established. You lead the EU, and as 88% of economists will tell you, as a government of Bank of England, we will plunge back to austerity. And one of the things the EU is trying to do is control those very bankers that brought the economy to their knees. Why is it the Leave campaign, the biggest funders are hedge fund managers, the very people whose gamble costs most people their life savings and their jobs? They don't want any restrictions. They want to live in a complete free market economy. We don't believe that. We want there to be control on risk in the economy. And that's why they don't like the EU.
Councillor Kirkbride, you want to come back on that one?
Thank you. I just want to come back on that because I've heard this an awful lot from the Remain side that we will plunge into a recession if we leave, but there's no
Government
evidence
Bank
of
of
that.
England said that, not the Leave.
And yet, what they actually said was we would lose 10% of our GDP. That was the number that was going around, 10%. If you add up the loss of the GDP of the Great Depression, the First World War, the Second World War, and the 2008 crash, they don't add up to 10%, yet 10% was what was thrown around. So that seems like an enormous number to essentially pluck out of thin air.
Keeping it balanced in, out, Alan, you have something to contribute.
Yeah, I mean, what really annoys me is that people from the Leave side constantly look to blame the EU for everything when it's already been pointed out that national governments run their own fiscal policy. There's high unemployment in Spain, that's because of failures of the Spanish government. We can't just chuck everything to one bag and say to the EU. And I just quickly want to take up Adam's point, and he referred to Greece. Now look at Greece, and I thought the way that Greece was treated was abysmal, it was awful, and it was wrong. But why is it that the left-wing governments in Greece, Syriza, Alex Tsipras, the majority of the Greek Party, all the progressives, and the majority, which is more important, the majority of the Greek public still want to remain in the EU?
By the way, feel free to chip in, not just with questions, but with points from the audience. Gentlemen to the right there.
Yeah, being a youth on an apprenticeship, so I require like government funding. How would both sides sort of affect me? So leaving on staying. Okay, so this is sort of open to anyone.
Adam?
So I think it's an underreported but very important example that we're seeing at the moment in how to fight youth unemployment. The examples coming from France. There are massive strikes in France about introducing a new labour law. One of the points behind the new labour law is basically to make people work longer. If you work fewer hours, you can have more jobs, including jobs for young people. I think my vision, if you like, of a different world, including it, but not limited to a different Europe, is where we have solidarity between workers in one country going on strike and workers in another country going on strike. The best example of that was when the BMA and the junior doctors went on strike recently. But also we're seeing the teachers about to go on strike. That's the way to change things, and that's the way to reduce youth unemployment. That's the way to get rid of food banks. That's the way to get decent jobs.
Councillor Martin, I think you're going to come back.
Yeah, so it's accepted that 3 million British jobs are dependent on trade with the EU. Now, when it comes to the end of your apprenticeship, you're going to want to go into a job. Now, if you leave the EU, that'll put so many jobs at risk, and it'll make it so much more difficult. And you see, we get this from the Leave campaign, this idea that the economic threat isn't there. And the head of Leave.eu, Aaron Banks, has himself said £4,300 per family per household loss if we leave the EU is a price worth paying. That's a direct quote. Somehow, there's this strange attitude that there's an international conspiracy, that all these leading financial institutions in the world, like the International Monetary Fund,
The ones that are funded by the EU.
no, the IMF are funded by individual EU countries. They all want to gang up on Britain. It's this bizarre World War II style rhetoric, and we need to move on from it.
Martin, do you believe that these institutions, Mervyn King, the leader of NHS England, are they just making this up, or what's the response to that?
Before I answer that one question, I just want to come back on the point I've made that 3 million jobs are, what was the word they used? Dependent. That's incorrect. There's 3 million jobs. The actual study, if you read it, was actually said there's 3 million jobs linked to the EU. They are not dependent on the EU.
So it's okay to risk them then, is that what you're saying?
It wouldn't be a risk, because just because something is linked doesn't mean it's dependent. For example, linked, we've got Warburton's bread locally. Now, if they've got a production line there with X amount of people making bread and they sell that bread to Ireland, that means, because Ireland is also an EU partner, that the people who have made that bread in that factory and everything to do with the preparation of that and the delivery are linked to the EU. If you think of the bureaucrats, if you think of the MEPs, if you think of the drivers, the security, absolutely everything there is linked, maybe so, but linked to the EU. There are no jobs other than the MEPs that are reliant or dependent on the EU. The study said linked. To come back to your point about the Leave campaign being funded by the banks, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Deutsche Bank, these heavily fund the institutions like the IMF. And you've got these great institutions, these big financial global bodies that are all saying that it would be a fundamental economic failure. The biggest failure of the British economy recently wasn't the 2008 crash. It was 3 days after the 2010 general election. The pound suffered more in those three, when it fell further in those 3 days than it did in 2008. I work in financial services, the company I work for, I can't...
Sorry, is that because of the lack of...
Because of no government in the global financial marketplace. London is the global financial marketplace. The London Metal Exchange. If you want to sell metal, if China want to buy aluminium or Germany, they have to do it on the London Metal Exchange. Everything. To answer the young man's question there on jobs, we need funding. We need more apprenticeship schemes, we need more university placements, we need more college placements, we need more places like Bolton Training Group, like Bolton College. They're underfunded, desperately underfunded. And one of the reasons is because we're spending too much money in EU fees. And one of the things is the EU directive on state, it's called the European State Assets and Liabilities Directive. It's how much money or how much liability a nation state is allowed to give financially. And because of that directive, they can't invest as much as they'd like in areas like Bolton College. Out of the EU, there's more money to fund Bolton Training Group kind of places nationally. That's okay.
Where is this coming from, this money? I'm sure Boris Johnson's not going to spend it.
Gentleman with the spectacles, as David W. would say.
I'm assuming that the panel are more or less from Bolton, aren't they? They're all from Bolton.
West Yorkshire.
So we're all more or less residents. But what I'd like to know is, as an answer, which I'm sure everyone here would want to know because we're all from Bolton, is how does it affect us in Bolton, this decision of in or out? And I think a lot of the stuff that's been said, a lot of the numbers, the statistics, the figures are affected like on a national level. I mean, you go into another argument about how does the south affect the north, you know, how does Manchester affect Bolton? But how does it really matter to us as residents of Bolton? How does it work?
May I ask where you live? Whereabouts in Bolton? So you're aware of some of the housing developments that are going on in Lostock, Heaton? They're all being created under the European Housing and Immigration Directive, which is basically eating up the Greenbelt land.
It's where? God, what a fantasy!
The gentleman here said about
what a fantasy!
Gary, do you want to come back on that
EU Habitats Directive?
Let Gary come back on that one first. You've been there, you've been in the European Parliament. Is there any truth in that?
It's a fantasy. It's really taking something to its extremes. It's nonsense.
So in terms of how it affects Bolton and Karen, you obviously know maybe from the northwest, sort of maybe smaller towns or satellite towns like Bolton perhaps. How will that be affected by a decision, or I suppose in your case, how will it be affected if we've got to leave on the 23rd?
Look, we're part of the United Kingdom, part of the United Kingdom economy. The United Kingdom economy suffers, so does the Bolton economy suffer. In addition, of course, Greater Manchester has a significant amount of European funding to regenerate the economy. And in the worst years of the Thatcherite government, that was the only money, capital money, local authorities had to spend to help regenerate our economy. And that is something that we mustn't lose sight of. So in terms of, it is part of the general economy. You will get on if you go on holiday, you will get on the cheap airline saying there's somebody who lives in the south of England. We are part and parcel of that overall picture. You can't be separated out. Bolton companies are reliant on us being part of a single market and the opportunities which are created in that single market. And all these sort of conspiracy theories about somehow the EU stopping us doing things is simply fantasy. There's nothing about Bolton's green belt. This is being affected by EU law. I mean, surely the Habitats Directive, yeah, make sure we protect our habitats and protect our green belt.
Councillor Kirk Robinson, you're a Bolton councillor. You've also campaigned against building in the green belt. Is there anything in truth in what Martin says there? Are we affected by that? Will there be more houses built because of being part of the EU?
I honestly couldn't tell you. I'm not familiar with the particular piece of legislation that he's talking about, so I wouldn't want to speak from a point of view of not having the information.
Or a case study after the fact.
I'll be very happy to read it, because at the moment we are having a lot of trouble with developers who are essentially running roughshod over councils and trying every trick under the sun in order to build houses purely because of profit, despite the fact that we don't have the resources to assist people who would eventually live in those houses.
On the Bolton specific issue, you're a councillor here. How do you think Bolton will be affected on either vote?
Well, either way, we're going to get affected. What will happen is, if we leave, there will be a little bit of uncertainty, the same way that there was after the 2020 election, as has already been pointed out. But the idea that Europe is funding us with plans for this, that and the other, it's coming out of our money anyway, because as the Remain campaign is always so happy to say, when we mention the £55 million a day that will be sent to Europe, that, oh well, actually we only send them 24 million because we get 31 of it back. It's still our money. We still had to find that money somewhere, and usually we're having to find it by adding it to the national debt. So if we're having to find this money anywhere, why not use it better? Why not fund local housing? Why not fund education? Why not fund farming subsidies? And why not fund everything else that we could? And still have money left over and not increase our debt.
Gentleman at the back there.
Yeah, this is just a general one, and at the same time a question to Zoe. Refer back to the climate change. There was rumoured that the government £1 million was spent on these floods that went to a small town in the European Union, and then obviously the floods happened, and while that town did go under floods. There you go. And their town survived because our money was spent on that, and that must have obviously come from the European Union. And also as well, refer back to when the World Banks went down and we went through a massive recession. As I remember, our country was one of the biggest in growing that back. So why can't we do mine our own out of the European Union? We clearly have the power to do that. And then was asked about the other countries, and look what happened with Greece. We saw them decline through the recession, yet it's still at the last minute, European Union have asked everyone to help them build this country out. But also, what do the Conservatives have in place for if we do leave? There's got to be a structural, obviously trade prices could obviously change, studies could obviously change, even though myself through YMCA studied in Bulgaria for 2 weeks at a time and worked in Bulgaria for 2 weeks at a time. We're not a member of the European Union.
Yes,
Sorry, Bulgaria.
Bulgaria, remember, yeah.
But also, what's in place for when we do leave, if we leave?
Well, I'm actually going to ask Adam to go. It's a controversial one because it's what's in place for us we do. Of course, you're from the left wing side of things, but are you fearful? You obviously probably campaign against this Conservative government. Are you not fearful of being left isolated on the line with the Tories? Oh, I'm sorry.
So I think like a lot of the question about what about Bolton or what about Britain or all these kinds of things, actually you have to look inside Britain, inside Bolton, inside the European Union, and break it apart and say, what do these things consist of? And actually at the top there's a 1%, and everyone else is suffering. Everyone else is suffering from austerity. I struggled to restrain myself when the Conservative Council was talking about we could spend money on this, that and the other, because what they do is cut, cut and cut, right? So for me, what I hope will come anyway, and what I would hope will come after we leave the European Union, is solidarity. It's solidarity whether you live in England, anywhere else in the UK, whether you live in France, but also whether you live elsewhere in the world. Because that's the only thing that's going to make any difference. We need solidarity to struggle together, the 99%, we need to take on the 1%. And very importantly, that also means campaigning against racism. So I have a leaflet here about a convoy to Calais to help the refugees and to show them some solidarity. It's a convoy which leaves on June the 18th. And if you'd like to join it or contribute to it in some way, please see it at the end of the meeting.
Alan Johnson, are you worried about the ramifications of being isolated?
And more certainly am. I fear being out of the EU under possibly Boris Johnson or IDS or Michael Gove government, then I fear any EU Commission. Just want to say, I think it's in 19. Again, and you allowed it to go. You're sidelining these issues again. Which projects are underfunded in this town, like tackling youth unemployment. That's not down to the EU. Then it's down to the Tory government. As Adam just said, just listen. It's just cut. Austerity. I'm anti-austerity, but I get so annoyed when again UKIP keep pointing the finger at the EU as being responsible, not taking on board national governments' austerity measures, attacking the most vulnerable in our society. Please don't point the finger at the EU. Let's discuss the EU.
From the most needy, because they have to foot a £350 million over.
Bankers like Nigel Farage, how do you like to live?
I do work in finance, yeah.
We're all in this 350 million.
You and your party are at the
350 million but are we not aiming at the money that comes back in to underfund?
We get a rebate. We get a rebate circa £220 million a week. Now a rebate,
about 5 subsidies.
We get it back. So before we can get anything back, it first has to be given.
It doesn't work that way.
So, well, £350 million a week is given.
350 million is a lie.
Which we get that, which we get.
How does the six authority is a
One
lie?
second, let's just have one meeting, 1 second.
Lie.
It would be like me going into your bank account, taking £350 from your bank account, but then giving you back £128 in IGOS vouchers. Because that's exactly what the European Union do. We give them £350 million for a week, and they give us back £128 million, but they tell us what we need to spend it on. You need to spend this on the new building, just on Junction 6, on the A6.
But
on the central government.
Central government decides what to do.
Have a drive past when it has a European Union sign. It says this project is being funded by the European Union. The Metro extension, the big Alps development on
by Bolton Council. That's for the money. Only gives money.
But it can only be spent on certain projects that the European Union spend it on. The European Union tell us that we have to spend it on. We can't just spend it on. We can't give the junior doctors a 10% pay rise. Because the European Union wants us to use that.
They don't very far.
So, go on, Gary. So, is it this idea that the European Union is dictating what we can spend our rebate on? Is there anything in that?
A doesn't work that way. We don't give over money that comes back. It's all part of the calculation in terms of how much money is handed over. And B, as the CBI has shown, whereas it costs us something like £115 per person per year to a member of the EU, we get back in direct and economic benefit £1,300. So it's not so much simply what you put out, it's what you get back in. What are the benefits of membership? In terms of the EU support grants, money is available for certain sorts of projects which member states have decided they want European-wide investment in. If the project meets that criteria and is applied for by Bolton Council and then Greater Manchester Council, then it is granted. The EU doesn't say, you've got to spend on this. Bolton Council says, we want the money to put on the scheme which meets the criteria set out, just like any other grant or support scheme.
So then what's the point of the European Union? If they can apply to central government to get the money, we don't need the European Union at all, do we?
Well, I'll tell you something, in the 1980s, not one penny of direct capital money was made available by the Tory government. The only capital money that was available for councils like Bolton, Salford and others in Greater Manchester came from the European Union, applying for support for regeneration projects. If you think that under the Tory government, when Boris Johnson takes over, if we ever leave, that they're going to spend more money on all these things that they're spending on, you are thinking you're in a clown cuckoo land, frankly. It ain't going to happen.
As James pointed out, he went to Bulgaria as part of a training programme for 2 weeks, which was funded by the European Union through Erasmus+. There are young people in this room here who are going to France next week, including myself, with some of us going later in the year. Do you think remaining within the EU or leaving the EU would affect opportunities for young people to study and to learn, particularly in Europe?
Andrew Martin.
Yes, of course it would. I'm sure someone's going to point out that Turkey does participate in these things in spite of not being a member of the EU.
Yes, sorry.
But there's a specific reason why a few countries on the periphery do. Exactly, and it's part of an effort by the EU to democratise countries on its frontier like Turkey. Yeah, absolutely. Why would the EU keep funding schemes for British people to go and travel to EU countries after we've left the EU? It's like this idea that the EU is going to come begging us for a trade deal after we've left. There are 500 million people in the EU as it stands. It would be a little bit less than that if we left. As if they're going to say come along to Britain and say, we need your trade deal. They're a bigger economic area, they've got more power. With all these things, the EU would have more bargaining power. That is how international relations work. That is why we don't make our trade deals ourselves. We make them through the EU because the EU gets a better deal from China, gets a better deal from the USA, gets a better deal from Mercosur.
How does this affect young people and their work in the world? You know, just try not to speak too much about trade deals directly.
But it's all linked. We have our free movement rights thanks to the EU. If we wanted to maintain those free movement rights, we would have to keep offering them to people from other EU countries, and we would have to keep paying in to the single market.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't have all this magic money which they've spent more than 6 times over. We would still be paying. If we want to keep these rights, we'd still have to pay.
Councillor Kate Robinson, your constituents in West Orton, for some young people who want to go and study abroad or work abroad, will they be adversely affected by an outvote?
If they want to go and study in Europe within the next 2 years, of course they will, because we won't be leaving for the next 2 years.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Oh, it's all right then.
Obviously,
screw them later.
Because they keep going on about, this, that, and the other, with the figures is wrong. But Councillor Martin's talking about trade deals and treaties with China and America. The European Union doesn't have a trade agreement with China. It doesn't have a trade agreement with America. It still trades with them. And it would still trade with us because the largest...
It does have a trade.
It does have trade deals.
Because it has a trade agreement. We will be trading with the trade agreement.
Actually, you can trade with whoever you like. You don't need a trade agreement. All you need is for them to want to buy the products that you're selling, which is how we do it with China, which is how we do it with... Well, actually it does. So
it doesn't work.
It works out that outside of the EU.
Yeah.
The EU want free trade deals and trade deals. Various companies done. There's organisations for the World Trade Organisation.
Yes. The trade agreement that the EU is trying to put together with America at the moment, TTIP, that sounds like a really bad thing to me. It's basically allowing America to dictate several things about copyright and trademarks for a start, which shouldn't have anything to do with a trade agreement, but they're putting that in anyway because it helps their businesses. And this is the thing, if we left, and I really hope we do, we will still have to trade with Europe and they will still have to trade with us because they trade
bargaining power
and they won't matter with that because they trade more to us than we do to them. The largest country. Let's
get back to the floor.
EU trade with the UK is 8% of their GDP. Our trade with the EU is 45%. Now, that's a big difference.
Yes, and that's due to the size differences. They have far more people than we do, therefore the GDPs are skewed. Oh,
let's get back to the floor.
Yes.
And let's keep the people in the audience engaged. Gentleman on my right hand.
Yeah, so speaking from a Leave perspective, obviously we want countries to be independent from the EU. But the issue that we currently have is we have people within our country that can't be independent because of housing crises. Now I turn 20 next year, how would leaving affect me and how would staying affect me in sort of getting a house? So obviously I still live with my parents, but that's not something I want to in the future.
Yeah, okay. How does the future be affected by this?
Well, I think leaving will affect in many ways, and that's one way.
support there on offer from being a part of the EU?
Well, yes there is. Yes, yes there is. I think, you know, I mean, the leave side seeing everything, a panacea, if you will leave, everything will be rosy again, will be rosy. That is not so. Again, things that people, we're getting models up here, everything, the EU is so bad, and we're not looking at national governments. Of course, it's all the government needs to stop cutting and stop austerity and start tackling the banks and start making the banks pay the way and stopping tax avoidance and evasion, getting the millions, 120 billion pounds a year at least, back into the Treasury's coffers. Stop. I mean, what the EU is doing is at least making some attempt to close down on tax avoidance and evasion. No, but my party wants to see more measures in tackling tax avoidance and evasion. We want to see the EU reform. We want to stay in it, but we can only reform if we stay in it. And we need to stop these people, these groups, from getting away with paying the first year in tax and bankers' bonuses and capping bankers' bonuses. And I've got to say, the EU have gone somewhere to dealing with that.
You've not answered the question.
Well, I think I have answered the question. I think I have answered the question that there is.
No question.
Do you have a mortgage on you?
I'm 19, so no.
Would you like to, you'll be looking to get a mortgage at some point?
I would in the future, yeah.
Google the EU Mortgage Directive. Right, it comes into play in July next year. It's a very, very bit of legislation, very, very scary piece of legislation. I think it's hard to get a mortgage today. The EU Mortgage Directive, what the hell that's got to do with trade and freedom of moving people? They're telling our banks how they're allowed to give mortgages to our young people like yourself is absolutely despicable.
Well, it doesn't, that's why.
Well, Google EU Mortgage Directive.
That's after this.
So I think the problem is the 1% and the problem is the bankers. And in order to solve the housing crisis, we need a radical redistribution of wealth from the 1% that are hiding their money in Panama and places like that towards everybody else. You know, towards the people that work and actually produce the wealth that they have then squirreled away in Panama and whatever other tax haven they use. In order to do that, I've had some principled arguments about austerity and I've had some principled arguments about racism, but actually the first thing we need to do is beat this government, right? Because they represent the bankers and they represent the rich. And it's a bit of wait a minute, it's a bit of a disgrace that the Labour Party unfortunately backed the wrong side in the Scotland debate, and that was one chance to get rid of the government. And now they're blowing it again by backing the wrong side in this debate. Alan made a good point. Alan and I agree on most of it. We might end up with Boris Johnson after that, but he'll be weak. Right, because we've beaten him on a whole load. We've beaten him in a whole load of issues. And then if we beat the government and the Bank of England and President Obama and the head of the IMF, all of whom want to stay in, if we beat them on this issue, we can go and beat them on other issues. But that's ultimately how
I'll answer the question if you want.
Just with the glasses on. Jordan's asked a very good question. We've got a housing crisis in Bolton, and I'm sure we have across the country, right? But to talk about the thing that you've been talking about is non-related to his question. His question was, how is it, in or out, is it going to affect Bolton housing? Because there's a lot of people in this room who are actually not on the ladder, or are looking for social housing, or even looking to save money to buy a house. So how is it, in or out, going to affect
the EU Mortgage Directive?
Rubbish.
It's not true. Not true.
Can you explain any more?
So that's the out. Is there anyone else got anything else to say about that? So as a local council, because you are local councillors, how's that going to influence? How's that going to influence coming?
Yeah, absolutely. I think ultimately when it comes to housing, the EU in or out, it's not going to make a great difference directly to that issue. It's a tangential issue. Now, if you want to have a job, if you want to have more money, you want to have lower prices, you want to be able to afford a mortgage, all those things, it's better to stay in the EU. And yet housing, it's a national issue, you know, it's a local issue as well. but it's not, the EU doesn't decide where we build our houses. And I mean, what Martin's talking about, there is a lot of work across the world what caused the financial crisis in the first place was that companies, particularly in America, but also in this country, were loaning out too much money in mortgages. In some cases, they were even loaning out more than the cost of the house in a mortgage. And then when house prices fell, people were in huge negative equity, and you ended up with these huge debts, and no one knew who owed what to who. The EU is making an effort to make sure that we can't have unsustainable mortgages. He's saying that'll drive your mortgage up. I'm saying that means that when it comes to it, they'll make sure that your mortgage is secure and safe, and that you won't be ripped off and trapped in a debt that you can't afford to pay back.
I've got 20% equity to value of a house and not getting one.
So I just want to ask a question of the audience here. We've had some comments there that we're not answering questions. Sometimes I appreciate it's difficult one. In terms of the campaigns that have been led on either side, I just want to know of the young people, has anyone been put off actually engaging with this vote because of the way politicians have campaigned against it? Do you guys feel any more sort of clear on the issues when you hear politicians arguing or not? And to you guys, do you think that the campaigns have been fair? Do you think they've helped?
I've been put off, to tell you the truth.
Why do you think that is?
I've started in some cases turning the news off now when they start talking about non-use things and they start talking referendum, mainly because of David Cameron, really. When he's going on project, if we leave, this bad thing will happen. And he said, this will go up, this will happen, this will happen, this will happen.
Conspiracy again, isn't
3 weeks down the line.
All the conspiracies, yeah.
Have you been
David Cameron say this bad thing will happen?
No, I think people are ready now. Feel a bit more confused than when they've come in. I just want to reiterate on a few points as well. I think the figures are around 35 million today into the EU. And also we're talking about the EU going in on about our houses. Well, we pay David Cameron, as it was revealed, £150,000 to govern our country. Yet we pay the EU 35 million, to stick their nose in and try and govern us as well. Well, why would we pay David Cameron if we're being now governed by another union?
Councillor Robinson, say your party is having something of an infight over this issue. Do you think it's putting voters off? Because this is one of the most important decisions we'll ever have to make, and people are being confused by the political backbiting.
Of course it's putting people off. Any time that people are just arguing amongst themselves, and what we've had here, where it's just shouting across each other and rather than actually addressing the issues, of course it's going to put people off. And unfortunately, that's just the nature of politics these days. We've lost an awful lot of the idea of politicians who actually come into it for the right reasons to make the country better. And what we've got instead is people that like to have a fight with one another, and that's no good for anyone.
No, not talking about councillors who like to have a fight, but Paul Richardson had his hand up for a while at the back.
Yeah, I'd like to
He did, but I just think he's had it.
I'd like to hear about the effect in our road on Bolton. If you take Bolton Council, one of the problems it's got is that it's incapable of planning for housing or education. The CCD is incapable of planning for GP services, ditto with the hospital trust. Because frankly, it hasn't got a clue how many people are going to bowl up next year or the year after from the EU. The second point I'd like to make, Mr. Chairman, could we get round, perhaps before I have to go anyway, to who governs this country?
Yeah, but just while we're taking through the audience, Councillor Howard, you have had your hand up. I'm not asking you to defend one council's position on this one, but what were you going to contribute before, and then we'll come to Councillor Richardson.
I want to make a contribution about what the people of Bolton want and are interested in relation to this vote. And you're right, yeah, I represent a board, and I know that people have got an interest certainly in immigration, certainly in jobs, certainly in the economy. But what stands out for me still, that I know that so many people who live and work in my ward have got concern about, is I am concerned about one issue, which is victims. I'll give you an example. I know that the European arrest warrant certainly improves how much justice we can get in our courts when people who have committed crime have gone to countries in Europe I know that we can swiftly bring back and get justice for our citizens, and I know that that justice matters to the people that live in my ward very much, and I know how much more difficult it is to get people back to our courts when they've fled to places like South America and other parts of the world. I know how long those cases take. The other thing I know that many people will talk about is that we do live in this global world now, and a lot of young people are very switched on to that. I mean, they educate me, you know, I'm not young anymore, so I get educated from young people. And so when I think about this, I think that is a very important part of this vote. I still have my strong worries about should we leave. I worry, for example, about our contribution to defence. I think that Europe as a body together contributes and will need to carry on contributing enormously to the security of people in the United Kingdom. By working with Europe, we get a much heightened security when we're dealing with world affairs. I believe that very much. I worry about an effect on NATO, for example. Should the position of the European Union change because Bolton, because the UK would vote to leave? I am concerned about those things. I think they do affect the people of Bolton. I think how secure this country is of paramount importance, and I'm not reassured. Despite the other factors people might want to vote leave, I am not reassured that we will be in a safer place if this country votes to leave the European Union. And that is my position at the moment.
If I can come back on that. The European arrest warrant isn't subject to European Union membership.
Oh, yes, it is.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
It's an agreement between
So
28
is
European
Norway?
member states. Because
I'll address the audience. Norway isn't part of the European Union.
It's part of the European Economic Area.
It is not part of Norway is not part of the European Union.
Pays into the EU as part of the
Norway is
area.
part of the economic area.
Let's have one meeting, please, guys.
Norway is part of the European
trying to,
Economic Area.
I'm trying to engage the audience, please, gentlemen. Norway isn't part of the European Union. This diagram, which I've got many copies of, which I'll give around, is from the European Union website. If you Google European diagram into Google Images, you can get a picture of that, and it has the Council of Europe, European Economic Area, the Black Sea Economic Area, European Union, Customs, everything. I've got lots of copies, I'll give them out. There are countries that are not in the European Union that are signed up to the European arrest warrant. Guaranteed 100. Norway, Iceland, Switzerland are not members of the European Union. Google who the 28 members of the European Union are. Those three are not, yet they get the European arrest warrant.
Can you respond to that, please?
Yeah. Norway, Switzerland and Iceland, Norway and Iceland are members of the European Economic Area.
Not the European Union, it's a completely different body.
No, it's not. The
Yes,
European
it is.
Economic Area is the EU single market extended to Norway and Iceland, and in part of that they are committed to free movement of labour, and part of that they're also committed to the European arrest warrant. Switzerland has negotiated a special agreement in the UK which allows it access to single market acceptance services, which also involves a free movement of labour and also therefore involves a European arrest warrant.
Norway does not have any MEPs. They are not in the European Union.
So they can't.
Norway is not part of the European Union.
Adam, I'm interested to hear the response to Councillor Howard's point. I thought you might know about doing this one, because you're obviously a strongly left-wing advocate. What do you worry about the effect on human rights? We are no longer signed up to the European Convention on Human Rights.
Well, that's not the question she asked, but I will answer your...
She asked about victims.
Well, okay, but I will... on the question of human rights, rights are what we fight for. It wasn't the European Union that introduced the Equal Pay Act. It was the strike at Dagenham in the early 70s. There's a question earlier about what puts people off politics. I think in general, or official politics. When I talk to young people at the university, for example, they're extremely political. They're talking about a lot of things like fracking, food banks, poverty, across the world. And what puts people off is the consensus. And the official political consensus we get all across the media is about 3 or 4 things. It's about we all accept austerity, all accept racism, we all accept the need for going around bombing other countries. What makes people across the world, including Britain, unsafe is precisely organisations like NATO, which go around bombing.
Don't accuse me of supporting warmongering when the case I was making was a case for greater peace in Europe.
Yes.
I believe in that. I mind that you're intimating that I'm some sort of warmonger. I am not.
The reason that I am, from a left-wing point of view, advocating voting to leave the EU is precisely because I want to weaken NATO. Precisely because NATO is a force for evil in the world. Precisely because
ISIS is a force for evil in the world.
ISIS was created by what America did in Iraq. It was created after the invasion. It was created by the way America deliberately increased sectarian tensions between Sunni and Shia, because that was the only way they could keep control. We are put in danger because we go around bombing the world. We're put in danger because of that, and also because of the Islamophobia in Britain.
Yeah.
That's what puts us in danger. The way to stop it is to stop bombing countries in the world, and to stop the racism at home. That's why I'm.
To be part of European diplomacy and conversation. Don't suggest. You're suggesting I was honing in on military action alone, and I wasn't.
The reason I'm in favour of leaving the European Union is precisely because I want to weaken NATO, and that is an argument I didn't get round to in my introduction, but I'm grateful for the opportunity you gave me to raise it.
On that fancy note, I think we're going to wrap things up because we've gone over the our hour mark. Thank you very much to all our contributors. Thank you very much to our audience. Thank you guys for not descending into full-on fisticuffs, but we got quite close.